Morning, Phil. This morning I want to talk to you about that ginormous putting green that's down at the Mount Golf Club. And what was the inspiration behind all of that? Well, are you legally allowed to call it that?
Well, it's in the sand dunes, and that was part of the vision when we developed the master plan for the Mount Golf Club. Was an oversized putting green because they had an undersized one as it is, 1,400 members and a putting green that was about 450 squares. And so
for relevance for people that don't understand square metres, what's that? If you could give it into something that's
probably an average in New Zealand, most club golf courses probably average green size. It's a generalisation, but maybe 400 is about 450, 500 square metres. And you know, that changes a little bit from different holes out on the golf course. But if you think about the formula for developing golf courses 50, 100 years ago, it was like, well, let's just make every green about the same. And so it was about the size of a green out on the golf course, maybe a little bit smaller than the ones that are at the Mount. And 1,400 members, and they're just smashing that thing every day. And so it was undersized, and I guess also if you throw in for the Mount, it's not a 2T start that they have. They usually have a 3T start with 3 loops of 6, and so for about an hour and a half, there's this intense pressure, and unless you're practicing your 6-footers, you pretty much couldn't do too much. You're cross country, and you
were trying to hit it through legs and trying to nutmeg people.
Really. And it doubled as the chipping green, because the chipping green was down in the hollow over the way. Yes, you could go down there to do a little bit of pitching and chipping practice, probably when you weren't playing, but when you were just warming up, a lot of people used to chip right there on the edge of the green, and so it was just a bit of chaos. Anyway, so what was identified is that they needed a bigger putting green to sustain the size of the membership and the amount of traffic and all that sort of stuff. Didn't imagine it would be 6,000 squares, go from 500 or 600 to 6,000 squares. But as we're working up the master plan and trying to develop something that was not only a little bit different for the members there. Tobes, you done? A little bit different for the members at the club and those that would use the course regularly in the area. We were also looking at the practice facilities as a whole, and putting green used to sit there right beside a range that was about 180 metres long now.
She was to wear a helmet sometimes, depending on who was hitting on that range.
The hosel got involved a few times. It was. You're warming up to putt and you thought you were at the gun range. So that needed to change as well. And I guess the entire practice facilities under review, and so the putting green and the range became a bit of a package, and that's when we started exploring other options for containing ball flight and reduced ball flight. And so the range concept was developed, and a lot of work was done on that. Pakuranga, I guess, were the pioneers in short flight range in New Zealand.
With technology.
Yeah, with technology, hitting the ball 40 metres into the nets, small footprint, being able to have a facility where people could swing the club, hit balls, get a bit of feedback of how they were hitting them. Facility that was undercover for a lot of lessons that were every day, no cancellations because of the weather. And as we were working that concept up, then space became available to expand the putting green. So it was kind of in that order, really. It was, but it was most definitely a combo package between the putting green and chipping green needing to expand, and the range needing a different treatment.
Couple of points on that. once that space started to free up and you knew all that range area now was sort of open to market, there's a place a little bit up the road that has a pretty ginormous putting green. The inspiration maybe taken a little bit from there. But was there an inkling and you're like, hey, maybe we could make the biggest thing in the country here or biggest thing in the South Pacific?
Oh, no, it was never driven by that. The ultimate inspiration is from the ladies' putting course, nicknamed the Himalayas, at the old course.
Right.
And so for anybody that has been to St Andrews, they know what we're talking about. If you haven't, the first stop when you get into town at the old course at St Andrews has got to be at the Himalayas, the ladies' putting course. And they've got 2 courses there, and they've got a pathway that runs all the way through it.
Cool.
And so you go there pretty much any day of the week during the golfing season, I'm sure, but most definitely on the weekends. And there's anything from, I guess, e-bikes nowadays to prams to kids running around doing roly-polies to grandparents out there with their hickories. Everybody that has even a little meagre relationship with the game has fun on the Himalayas, on the ladies' putting green. And so
trying to encapsulate that.
That's been there from the start of the game, really. I know that started over at Presswick and all that sort of stuff. But at St Andrews, once golf started becoming popular and the ladies' putting course, as it's named, started becoming the small golf at the old course, it's been the inspiration for a lot of these sorts of things around the world. And so by no means is an oversized putting green a unique idea, but it's the ultimate inspiration was from the old course.
It is in this neck of the woods though, right? Like there's not many clubs in this country that have a putting green that could, accommodate, like you say. You could have the family over there having a putt and the little kids doing roly-polies, and then the guys are about to tee off for their 12:04 tee time, also warming up, and no one's sort of getting in the way and everyone's sort of having a good time.
Yeah, and I think that comes with a bit of space. Having that mixed use availability of the practice facility ultimately is an extension of a mini putt too. Where probably don't have too many single figure handicap people that are grinding at the mini putt, plumb bobbing it and all that sort of stuff.
They just had the putting champs, so there's a few that were out there grinding.
But the mini putt that's down the road with synthetic turf and concrete curbs and all those sorts of things, that's the introduction to golf for a lot of people. I can remember at Whangamata, the one there, I used to get dizzy going around it. When I wasn't playing Williamson or Tātaurangi or the other courses, I'd be down at the mini putt and getting dizzy going around there, trying to shoot a course record there. And always the hole of one on the last, of course, because then you get a free round the next, keep on going. And so everyone's got those stories about the mini putt, and that small golf was their introduction to the game or their short form of the game. And so when talking to the board, it was like, well, the big course is smashed. It's got 60,000 rounds going on it. Majority of member rounds, a little bit of green fee rounds and all that sort of stuff. But where do visitors of the club come if they can't get a tee time? How can you entertain them? And so the combination between the practice range and spending half an hour out on the putting green with a putting course, which probably has a little bit more contour in it than most putting greens, but you could play a small form of the game in the space of half an hour to an hour and feel pretty well served. And so that was the vision that we had started to develop for that facility at the Mount, and the board, they liked the idea of it. Pitching it to the members was, I think a lot of people got on board with it. They thought certainly the facility that they had at the time, the old putting green, and then there was the little putting green just on the edge of the clubhouse, probably wasn't serving the members that well, to the point where a bigger one would be put them in a worse situation. So I think the general idea of it was adopted, but probably everyone didn't have a real fair idea of
what it could be
when we drew it up and what it was actually going to become, and the size of it and the scale.
Yeah. So on that, do you reckon there's a lot of golf clubs in the country that could probably take a review at their practice facilities as it is, probably serving a select few of people that bring their own balls or do a bit of chipping, and see if that could be another service that they could offer for people who maybe aren't full-time golfers yet, or just got young families and want to kind of go out together?
Yeah, well, the game's so hard, isn't it? It's bloody difficult to make contact with the ball, get the ball to go in the air and get it to go in the general direction. And then you think that's the hard part, and then you get close to the hole and that gets even more challenging, right? But everyone can do the short game stuff. You don't need to be have any flash hand-eye coordination to chip and putt. And that's the small part of the game. And look, it's cliche that if you want to teach people how to play golf, you don't give them a 45-inch driver and say, here, have at it. A lot of young people are coming to the game in that way. They're attracted to it, and I understand it, but you generally get them as close to the hole as possible and then start working away from it. And so if you've got a facility that can accommodate that traffic and give people interest and enjoyment in the game at that really primary level, then you might hook them in to maybe go over to the range, hit a few balls. Once they start getting the ball in the air, get a few lessons, those sorts of things, then
this flow on and just can grow from there.
Yeah, that step into the big course then becomes a natural progression. But the game's so hard to get a set of clubs and roll up on the first tee and expect to try and figure it all out on the golf course. That's tough. So always having facilities where you can either teach people the game, they can be taught the game through some lessons, or they can learn the game on their own time by being able to play small golf, is critical to the continual growth of the game, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point on trying to have the interaction with the game, the first interaction with the game, not scare them off. Trying to have that first interaction not be something really intimidating, something really difficult where they feel like they're not making any progress, and something where they feel as though they're kind of getting laughed at or embarrassing. Whereas, like you say, everyone can have a bit of a whack at a putt around, and if you've got a massive putting green to do it on, not everyone's spying in on you. So having that first sort of touch point of like, oh, this is kind of fun, maybe I should try the other stuff, is so needed for, this day and age where people are very anxious and shy and worried about what people are thinking of them.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, there probably wasn't many options other than just try and borrow a set of clubs from someone and try and have at it.
Yeah. It's probably if you're into cards, probably wouldn't take people to the Cassie with a pocket load of cash and stick them down and go 5-hand poker. There you go, you're all on. You'd probably teach them how to play fish. Snap. Last card.
Yeah.
And then things can get a little bit more complex after that. But the coming back to the dunes, the thinking was, could we also try to mimic the landscape a little bit more? The putting green that was there was functional, flat with a little bit of tilt on it.
For people who might not know, just explain the geographical location maybe of where that is.
Yeah, so the putting green was just right beside the car park, right beside the first tee. It was in the busiest part of the site, and functional in that with a 3-tee start, the first tee was right there by the edge of the putting green, also right by the pro shop. Have to walk past that to get over to the 7th tee. The routing there has 3 loops of 6, and I've said this, that they're probably a little bit ahead of their time. And although the site is basically a 48 hectare rectangle, getting back to the clubhouse 3 times when Harry Dale laid it out in the late 40s was, here we are in the 2020s and people are thinking about how can we play short golf. Well, 9-hole golf's taken off, but at the Mount, play 6 holes and 12 holes and you're back to the car park.
And they actually also have a 9-hole loop that you can work in there, which they do on a Tuesdays as well.
Sure
So
too. And
it's
so
kind of worked out well on that side front.
yeah, so short golf's always been part of their history at the Mount, and gives them maximum amount of adaptability for tee times and for, sometimes you tee off on the first and you play it 1 to 18, sometimes you play off 7, sometimes you play off 13, and the golf course has a different character when you play off the different starting tees and different closing holes, those sorts of things. But the primary putting green was right by the first tee, and so it was the first thing that greeted you out of the car park. And it was jammed in there because the range was over to the side and the cart shed's over the other side, but it was a really busy part of the site. And so probably just the over the years with the clubhouse renovation or redesign, rebuild taking place in the late 90s, that meant that the pro shop changed and all the practice facilities kind of changed around that time. So the most recent iteration of changes meant that there was really dense, compression of everybody all in that same area. And
sort of a bottleneck.
It meant that the putting green was probably functional. Again, pretty flat. Don't make too many contours in it if it's not going to be too big, because then all the whole green can be cuppable, can be puttable as well, and ultimately you're not managing a whole heap of green that's not going to be usable. But it also means that the putting was probably pretty boring. And you could, the longest putt you'd had across the green when there wasn't too many people on it was about 10 metres, 40 feet sort of thing.
40 feet-ish, yeah.
10 to 12 metres, something like that. And it would break maybe a cup or two. And so very functional, but the master plan that we've developed is to bring some authenticity back to the landscape. And
so geographically we're 100 yards just over from the beach.
We are in the back dune at the Mount, and so Ocean Beach Road is right on the back side of the fore dune, and it's a big dune structure at the Mount. When you go back and have a look at some photos from 80 to 100 years ago, and for those that have been down to the Mount, holidaying and familiar with the beach, it's one of the more iconic beaches in New Zealand, I guess, is that understanding that dune structure of taking all those houses away, and the sand dunes used to roll all the way over Ocean Beach Road, and where the golf course is, there's all of these dune ridges that are through the course, which are all part of the back dune prior to all the water coming over and getting into the harbour and getting stuck there and being windswept. But a lot of those dune ridges that are through the middle of the golf course extend all the way down into the Mount, and they extend all the way down to Papamore as well. And so golf course pretty much plays within the valleys most of the time, and every now and then you kind of hopscotch over them. And the green sites have all, again, functional, just been flattened off, and all the area around them have been flattened off, and there's more interesting landscape for golf out there, but probably the closer you get to the green, it's all being muted over time. So the vision for the golf course is to rebuild a lot of those natural dunescapes where they've been flattened out for the function of golf, and now have golf play in that landscape as opposed to imposing itself on it. And so again, kind of coming back to the dunes and the vision for that, could we rebuild that dune ridge that went right through the middle of the old the old driving range. And it was an extension of the dune ridge that comes down from the 6th hole and goes all the way through and then down onto Range Road and heading all the way down to the Mount. Could we rebuild that dune and that be a demarcation point, a separation point between primarily putting and then the short game area over the other side? And in and of that, obviously add quite a bit more contour and make it a little bit more random. And we've got a big central dune as well that doubles as a tournament tee for the first for maybe the Charles Tour event and maybe a couple of others only. But
when there's a pin up there, she's a good playoff hole, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah.
You come in all square, you got a little playoff hole there on the putting green.
Yeah. No.
We don't need to talk about who won that one.
Yeah. I set out the when we were building it, I didn't really kind of think about a putting course per se, but now we've got areas where people can putt just before they tee off. And then the club have a constant 18-hole putting course that is more out in the more heavily contoured land away from the first tee. And it just happens to be that it seems like the guys, when they're setting the pins out there, because you can just put all the cups out there and change the pins around if you wanted to, but it seems like the closing hole seems to always somewhere be around that central dune, and that means that if you've got a little bit of a match going, it comes down to the last hole. It could be a 7-putt that wins it.
Yes, certainly if there's any breeze out there, it's hard to hold it on top. All right, and coming and close of this, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you did really well with that putting green, but then also what was something you'd do differently if you were to do it again.
Good shout. Really happy with the way that the shaping came up. Greg Shaw came down and helped us with that. A little bit of backstory, just a little bit of backstory.
Just a little bit.
When we were building that, we came across a seam of bark underneath the green. Now, we'd done some test digs and didn't come across it. Must have been right on the edge of it. But when we were building it, we discovered this whole seam of bark. It seemed like about 50 years ago, when the club were readying themselves for expanding the car park, moving the clubhouse, they had a big valley there that they needed to fill up. Apparently they took a whole heap of scraps down from the port, bark scraps, and buried them into that area. Covered it back over with dirt, grew a bit of grass, all good.
There we go.
50 years later, here we are going to build a putting green. We'd done some test digs all around the site, and we got to that area, and we're just on the edge of it, obviously. And we didn't come across it. When we were building it, came across this 3 metres deep. Had to excavate all of that out. It was about 2,000 square metres of bark that we had to remove in the end of it. Finally got down to dune sand, filled all of that in, got all of the stormwater to work, and so I'm kind of particularly proud of that we had to adapt things on the fly.
Explain to people a little bit further why bark is such a complication.
Well, it's a bit like a sponge sitting out, and it was right underneath the existing putting green. Half of the old existing putting green didn't used to drain very well. Blair couldn't quite figure it out, and 500 deep, of course, when he was taking core holes and going through the profile, it wasn't going quite that deep. About 500 through the profile, came across the bark. So it was a sponge, so it sat wet. So we'd see a big rain event, be sitting there watching it. Half of the green would drain really well, the other half would be just a bit of a sponge. And so that wasn't ideal. Go Tobes. And so it meant that, that's no good to build a green on. It was going to settle over time. We've seen on the edge of the car park that some areas have been settling and sinking, and it was going to slowly break down. 50 years, to be fair, when we pulled it out, a lot of it was still intact, which tells you a little bit about what sort of material it might have been in there. But there was some big logs and all sorts of different bits and pieces. So we had to take them out, bury them over behind the back of the range, and they'll break down over time. But the shaping that we came up with to break the green into a few different zones and areas, but also mimic that natural landscape, or what maybe that natural landscape might have been prior to putting a golf course on it, was so that the guys did a really good job of that, and we spent plenty of time, spinning circles and trying to get little hole locations here and trying to figure that all stuff out. When it rains now, all the water goes where we want it to. Got green drains really well. Blair and his team did a fantastic job of growing it in. I think week 17 weeks after seed drop, it was ready to play on, and ready to play on putting at 10.5 feet. Not ready to play on and just nurse it through.
Yeah.
So Blair and the team have done a brilliant job. It's been a bit of a handful getting to understand it, and I think a lot of people come in and a lot of greenies come in and go, oh my God, I wouldn't want to maintain that. And there's some extra cost involved in maintaining it, but it's an amenity now for the club that's basically like a second golf course. What would we do differently? This seems weird, just build a 6,000 square foot green. It would have been nice to have had a little bit more space down in the chipping area. I think we've probably got a little bit squeezed down there. There were a couple of things that made it a bit trickier with the existing ground levels, and just mindful that when balls are getting airborne close to the houses, we didn't want any ball strike. That's what we're trying to alleviate from when the range was there. It would have been nice to have had a little bit more space down there, and maybe we used up too much space with the putting green. But we were thinking that instead of having two separate greens in that area, and then people being tempted to spend a lot of time chipping towards the putting green, that we moved the chipping area all the way down to the far end. And so at times it can get a little bit busy down there, and just with the way that the land was rolling down there, we probably don't have quite as much chipping space as we'd like. So guys have filled in half of the bunker and added a little bit more pitching and chipping space down there. But hey, the club's busy, and it kind of warms my heart that there's a lot of kids down there and spend a lot of time chipping and putting. And there's a bit of a wear factor with that, but it's going to be probably a bit of a challenge for us to try and figure that out as we learn the course and learn the facility over time.
Cool. All right, I'm ready to go for a chip and a putt now.